One easy thing you can do in your courses that will affect a large number of folks is to make sure the foreground and background colors you choose for your text provide sufficient contrast for all users. Failure to do so can affect people with certain kinds of color blindness and low vision, but it can also affect people without disabilities who are trying to access your materials from their phone in bright sunlight, for instance. So, how do you know if your content has sufficient contrast? Well, there is actually a standard specifying how much contrast is enough. This is basically that regular text has to have a 4.5 to 1 contrast ratio, and larger or bolder text must have a contrast ratio of at least 3 to 1. There's even a formula for determining what the ratio is for your content if you know the color of the text and the color of the background. Fortunately, you don't have to deal with all that if you are using Canvas's rich content editor. Let me demonstrate. Here, we have a page that demonstrates a number of issues related to color and contrast. Scanning it visually, I might wonder whether certain color choices I have made will provide sufficient contrast. How would I know? In Canvas, I don't have to guess. If I click the Edit button to bring up Canvas's rich content editor, I can just click the Check Accessibility button in the editor's toolbar, and it will show me a list of problematic content on the page. The Check Accessibility drawer slides in from the side, which shows the issues on the page and provides tools for fixing them. Because it's a little more complicated, I'm going to skip the first error by clicking the Next button. But if we go to the second one, it highlights the red text, List of Group Members, in the editor. In the Accessibility Checker drawer, it tells us that we have an accessibility problem. Text of this size should have a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1, and this text doesn't. Let's examine what else is in the drawer related to this error. Under Change Text Color, there's a field that displays the RGB value for the color, followed by a luminosity picker, a hue slider, and an opacity slider. Note that the Apply button is currently disabled. This is because the color currently being used doesn't have sufficient contrast. However, we can modify the color using any of these controls, and when the contrast ratio meets or exceeds the standard, the Apply button will become enabled, and we can apply this new color to our text. For instance, in the luminosity picker, we can see that there is a small semicircle in the upper right-hand corner. If we click on this and drag down, the color will become darker until the contrast ratio is sufficient, at which point the Apply button will become enabled, and we can click on it to apply the new color. So this solves one of our problems, but there are other color issues on this page beyond contrast. To get a sense of those, let's leave the editor by clicking the Cancel button and choosing OK in the dialog that appears. That will allow us to take a look at this page using the Web Disability Simulator. This browser extension lets us simulate what the page might look like to someone who cannot distinguish between any colors. To use this extension, we click the Web Disability Simulator icon button in our browser, and in the dialog that appears, select the simulation Total Color Blindness under the Cite button menu. Now, let's scroll down to the bottom of the page where we see some instructions that say, "Everything in red is due tomorrow." Obviously, people with this kind of color blindness would have trouble with these instructions. But so would people who are blind and using screen reading software. If we scroll up, we notice similar issues with the line graph and pie chart. Many of the colors in these graphics appear the same to me when I'm using the total color blindness simulator. How might we fix these problems? Let's find out by taking a look at the corrected version of this page by clicking the Next button. If we apply the total color blindness simulator to this page, we can see the difference. For the pie chart, we see there is now a white border separating each slice. There is also a line pointing to each slice, indicating which letter grade is associated with it. And we can easily see the number of people who got a particular grade because that number is displayed right in the slice itself. For those who are blind, there is also a table containing the data used to generate the chart. For the line graph, we use different strokes for each line rather than relying solely on color. And again, we make a table available which contains the data used to generate the graph. Below this, we see that where color had been used exclusively to indicate which assignments were due tomorrow, now that fact is communicated by adding the text "due tomorrow" in parentheses beside all the relevant assignments. I hope this video gave you some sense of the barriers folks might encounter because of content that relies on the use of color cues or that has insufficient contrast, and that you now have a better sense of what you can do to ensure your learning materials are accessible. You can learn more about how to ensure sufficient contrast in different kinds of documents such as Word, PowerPoint, and HTML by visiting the Check Contrast page we created for our Keep Calm campaign. Remember, keep calm. Choose accessible learning materials.